So I wanted to make a real quick video about curriculum and about like different models of education. So one of the things that like people have like a little bit of confusion on is around like curriculum and what curriculum actually is. So curriculum are a set of goals that kids are working toward, different markers that they're working toward that we know that they are learning at different rates. Now, they asked me what our curriculum is, and our curriculum is actually the same curriculum as the public schools. So basically, we just take the same goals that they have. But what's important is not actually the curriculum, it's actually more the methodology and the model of education. So traditionally, the model of education was for a teacher to have a lesson plan. Now, teachers still make lesson plans, but what they've done is they've switched over to Common Core. And Common Core is a forced part of the lesson plan that they're working towards so that we know where people are at in the learning process, so that we know whether or not they're consuming the material the way that they're supposed to be consuming it. So if you look at the traditional school model, it's almost the same way as if you had a runner who is running a race. So they're running their race and they're running the track, right? And they're consuming the content that's there. And then what happens is that in Common Core, they then go, okay, let's pull you out of the race so that we can then measure how fast you're running so that we know that you're running the race at the rate that you're running the race to get where we want you to go. So what they're doing is they're putting the goals ahead of the progress. And so what's happening is that they literally take them out of the race and they go, okay, well, we're making sure. Are we sure? Are you sure that you are where you're supposed to be at? And then after that, okay, all right, you're good. Put them back in. And then they do different things where it's like, okay, are you at where you're supposed to be at? Let's grade you on this. Let's just do that. Let's send you home with like homework. Let's make sure that you do this, and let's make sure you do that. And what happens is that the progress starts to get pretty messy. Right now, why does it get this messy? Well, let's think about like the homework, right? Like if some kid who goes home, who has homework, who got the material, who's running the race just fine, they go home, do they do the homework? A lot of times in counseling we find out no, they don't do the homework. They're failing the class not because they don't get the content, but because they didn't do the homework. So they're failing at homework, not at the actual material. They're doing fine in math. They're doing horrible at homework, but it doesn't matter because they failed the class, despite the fact that they could do the math work. So what are we grading? Math or their ability to do homework? Because they're failing homework. But it's logical why they didn't do the homework. I got the math. Why do I need to do the homework? It's a waste of my time. And they're right. So that's why this path is so convoluted. It's because the path is trying to get validation the entire time. It's trying to come around and say, we know where you're at because we saw you did homework, and we know on that homework that you performed at this level. We know on this quiz you performed at this level. We know on tests you performed at this level. So what happens is that all those different tests, that hinders somebody from running a race. The Atlantis model of education, straight line. Because what we do, right, is instead of having one overarching goal, right, that we're looking for, what we're interested in is whether or not people have a good strategy for learning. So what we do is we have binoculars to look at the race. If you're going past mile marker 1, then we know you're at mile marker 1. Mile marker 2, right? Mile marker 3. We know where you're at because we're watching the content that kids are consuming. So a kid could go and consume first grade material, and they may do it over and over and over again, but eventually they're going to get bored, and when they do, they're going to move on. Not only that, but they will have mastered the content that they consumed. So are we going to get to the same place that the curriculum wants us to? Yeah, we're going to reach the same goals, but we're not going to take them out of the race for them to reach that goal. We're not going to have them going on all these side trips to get to where we want them to go. They'll go there naturally. We just have to put good incentives for them to move down the track and also set them up to consume the content on a regular basis. And we can actually see, because what's happening is that we're consuming some information that says where they're at. So if we see some kid who's reading a book, and we use our little scanners and we scan the content of that book, and we say, oh, hey, this book is for 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds, and this student is a 6-year-old, then they're reading at a 7th or 8th grade level. And then they'll ask for help on that content, and they'll say, I don't understand this word, right? Then we'll step in and we'll improve it. We don't need to test them on that word. We're not worried about that. What we're worried about is them continuously moving down the path. We're worried about them running their race. Because learning is deeply personal. And this depersonalizes it. This says, I'm going to test you here. I'm going to measure you there. And how are you standing up against other kids? How can we make it through this system without feeling judged? We can't. But this allows kids to feel very personalized about their own race, to be able to move forward at their own pace, for them to feel good about where they're at. And for us, when we're here looking at where they're at, we can cheer them on. We can tell them, hey, keep going. You got this next place, right? We love that you're consuming this. We're enjoying hearing about the things that you're interested in. So the Atlantis model of education says, let's put progress over perfection. We don't need to assess every 2 seconds. What we can do is we can empower our teachers to come up with good models for this education, where we basically are having them come up with lesson plans that reach our goals, that have multitudes of different paths for students to take. So this is one of the big questions that we get. Do we have a curriculum? Yes, we do. We do have a curriculum. It's the same curriculum actually as the public school system. It's public. You can go and you can grab it. Do we have lesson plans for the day? We have content for lessons that gets us to those goals. We do, and a lot of that is free and public as well. How we get there is different. We're not focused on goals. We are focused on progress. Right? And because of that, we're more concerned about how somebody's running the race than what they achieve. Because if somebody didn't study at all and they got an A, that doesn't mean that they're a success. That means that the system failed. Because what happened is that child now has learned that they don't have to do anything and they got an A. Right? But yet, here, we would say that's a success. That they got A's, and that's good. But it's not good, because that's setting horrible expectations for the future. Whereas somebody who's moving along, who is working and doing a great job at producing progress, they learn that the harder they work, the further they go. So you see how we're setting them up for lifelong success by doing that. So there's a very big difference here in the models of how we do this. The curriculum is actually the same or very similar. So that's a common misconception on a big question that I get. So I wanted to take a minute or 8 to actually point out what the difference in these two models is. And you can see this one's more direct because we're focusing on a system. This one focuses on results. So that's what we're different on. Okay? All right, have a good night.